What if I were to suggest that there's a fundamental explanation for why you possess the capacity to envision grander aspirations than the majority of individuals you encounter, yet persistently find yourself ensnared by recurring routines, unproductive periods, and familiar setbacks? What if I were to assure you that by remaining engaged with me throughout all three segments of this presentation, you will ultimately acquire the singular insight that no self-help publication or widely circulated motivational video has ever furnished? A definitive guide to extricate yourself from this perpetual loop. This refers to the concealed rationale behind your stagnation. It delves into the profound aspects of your own psyche that Carl Jung endeavored to illuminate for the world. And ultimately, it provides the precise framework for transforming all your pent-up drive into tangible, enduring transformation. This is the ultimate prize for anyone who perseveres and doesn't abandon the journey prematurely. However, its true significance will only become apparent if you remain until the conclusion, as nothing will fundamentally alter until you grasp the complete picture. And I assure you, you have not encountered this information presented in such a comprehensive and interconnected manner previously. We are all intimately familiar with this sensation. You observe someone online, or perhaps within your personal sphere, achieving remarkable success. You reflect, I possess an equal, if not greater, abundance of ideas, and perhaps even more ambition. Why am I unable to replicate their achievements? You meticulously plan. You indulge in vivid daydreams. You earnestly tell yourself that this specific week will unfold differently. Yet when the moment for action arrives, an imperceptible force impedes your progress. Societal norms often label this as laziness. Perhaps you have even applied this very term to yourself on countless occasions. However, Carl Jung would contend that laziness is not an inherent personality flaw. It transcends mere physical exhaustion. Instead, it serves as a facade. It is a label we assign to a phenomenon far more profound, an internal conflict raging within your mind. The vast majority of individuals never delve beyond this superficial understanding. They mistakenly believe they simply require more self-discipline, a more optimized morning regimen, or a heightened desire. This is precisely why you can absorb hours of productivity-focused content and still remain inert on your sofa. The conventional world identifies this as a deficit of willpower. Jung, however, offers an entirely distinct interpretation. Jung's entire professional trajectory was dedicated to a singular objective: unearthing the facets of ourselves that we resolutely refuse to acknowledge. He termed this the shadow. This represents the concealed self that resides beneath the conscious surface. The shadow is not inherently malevolent, but it is remarkably astute. It encompasses all the apprehensions, uncertainties, unpleasant recollections, and insecurities that you consciously attempt to disregard. Herein lies the truly perplexing element. The greater your aspirations, the more expansive your shadow becomes. Why is this the case? Because every objective you establish, every calculated risk you undertake, every instance you dare to conceptualize a life beyond your current reality, your shadow perceives a threat. Its inherent function is to ensure your safety, to keep you confined, and to maintain your comfort. Consequently, when you embark on the path of ambitious dreaming, the shadow activates. Suddenly, you experience fatigue, distraction, and indecision. Every action feels disproportionately burdensome. Your intellect ingeniously contrives justifications for postponement, for rest, for evasion. Consider this carefully. How many instances can you recall where you resolved to institute a change, only to find yourself engaging in the exact opposite behavior just a few hours later? This is not indicative of weakness. It is a sophisticated psychological defense mechanism. Your ambition and your shadow are engaged in a relentless struggle, and until you comprehend the dynamics of this conflict, you will consistently find yourself at a disadvantage. You might be inclined to believe that motivation holds the key. Watch a few exhilarating online presentations. Experience that surge of adrenaline, and perhaps you will finally commence, right? But here's the crucial caveat. Motivation merely serves as fuel for the shadow's fire if you remain oblivious to the underlying impediments. Jung maintained that it is impossible to outmaneuver the aspects of yourself that you deliberately choose not to confront. The more you attempt to self-motivate without addressing the genuine resistance, the more profound your frustration will become when your efforts inevitably unravel once more. The shadow thrives on disappointment. Each time you experience a setback, it subtly whispers, "See, I cautioned you that it wouldn't succeed." Let us meticulously outline the actual sequence of events so that you can discern the pattern that nearly everyone overlooks. You experience a surge of inspiration. You establish an ambitious objective, perhaps initiating a new venture, undertaking a physical transformation, or transitioning careers. Initially, you are brimming with enthusiasm. You formulate detailed strategies. You confide in your acquaintances. However, as the days progress, doubt insidiously infiltrates. Distractions proliferate. You begin to negotiate with yourself. I will commence after I obtain more rest. After circumstances stabilize. After I acquire just one more piece of knowledge. Abruptly, a week has elapsed. Then a month. Your motivation has dissipated. You perceive yourself as a failure. You then seek a new source of excitement, a novel secret, and the entire cycle recommences. Here is the authentic secret. It is not a deficiency of motivation or inherent talent or available opportunities. It is a fundamental absence of an honest confrontation with the segment of yourself that is profoundly apprehensive of the potential repercussions should you genuinely undergo a transformation. Jung penned, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Reread that statement. How many times have you uttered, "That's simply who I am," or "I invariably botch things up," or "I suppose I'm just not destined for greater things"? That is your unconscious, your shadow, dictating the narrative of your existence, and you are erroneously attributing it to fate. However, fate is not an unalterable conclusion. It is merely the label we assign to recurring patterns that we fail to comprehend. This is the inquiry that scarcely anyone dares to pose to themselves. If you are ambitious but consistently fail to progress, what are you genuinely afraid of? Is it the prospect of failure, or is it the potential for success and all the transformative changes it will invariably usher in? Is it the fear of being subjected to scrutiny, or of distinguishing yourself, or the heightened expectations that arise when others anticipate more from you? The shadow is not attempting to sabotage your life. It is endeavoring to safeguard you from anguish, mortification, and disillusionment. Yet it cannot differentiate between genuine peril and perceived risk. Every time you heed that concealed apprehension, you incrementally diminish yourself. And with each instance of self-diminishment, your shadow gains a modicum of strength. Most individuals will disengage before this profound truth fully resonates. They will persist in living within the confines of the same repetitive cycle, attributing their stagnation to their energy levels, their willpower, or their misfortune. However, if you remain with me for all three segments, this is what you will gain. You will finally comprehend the operational mechanisms of your shadow within your own life. You will acquire Jung's methodical approach for rendering the unconscious conscious step by step. This goes beyond mere theoretical concepts, offering concrete, actionable tools, and ultimately you will receive the definitive blueprint to translate your ambition into tangible action. Regardless of how many times you may have faltered previously, the majority of people never grasp this. If you do, you are already significantly ahead. Within the subsequent segment, I will meticulously illustrate the precise methodology for unveiling your personal hidden self and detail the outcomes that manifest when you cease internal conflict, choosing instead to collaborate with your subconscious faculties. Should your desire extend beyond mere sensationalism, if you find yourself weary of perpetual stagnation, then it is imperative that you do not overlook the forthcoming installment. The ultimate recompense awaits, accessible exclusively to those who persevere to the culmination of this expedition. It is highly probable that you have, at some juncture, attributed past failures to personal shortcomings. Perhaps you categorize this as indolence, a deficit of self-discipline, or even an unfortunate genetic predisposition. However, the fundamental truth remains that the vast majority of individuals have never acquired an understanding of the genuine origin of their inherent resistance. Carl Jung would unequivocally assert that the totality of what you perceive as your existence is predominantly a composite of your unconscious behavioral patterns, with your shadow entity orchestrating events from behind the scenes. This phenomenon is not indicative of inherent frailty. Rather, it stems from archaic survival mechanisms, deeply embedded memories, and convictions so profound that their very presence remains undetected. This inherent complexity elucidates why the process of change often feels so profoundly burdensome. You are not merely contending with a habitual behavior. You are actively challenging the imperceptible power that has afforded you a sense of security and familiarity since your formative years. Yet if your aspiration extends beyond simply exerting greater effort, you must undertake an endeavor that almost no one dares to attempt. Directly confront your shadow. Reflect upon the last occasion you genuinely yearned for transformation. Perhaps it involved the pursuit of improved health, the establishment of a commercial enterprise, or the acquisition of a novel proficiency. Did you observe the alacrity with which your mind conjured pressing distractions? Abruptly, activities such as tidying your living space, perusing your mobile device, or merely discussing your aspirations assume greater importance than actively pursuing them. This occurrence is not coincidental. It represents your shadow vigorously defending its dominion. Why does this occur? Because every authentic transformation poses an inherent threat to your established zone of comfort. Your shadow will vehemently resist, divert your attention, and even inflict penalties upon you in the form of apprehension, culpability, or disgrace. Any tactic will be employed to dissuade you from undertaking a risk. Jung consistently observed this pattern among his patients. Individuals would present with grand ambitions, yet beneath the surface, they were consumed by a profound dread of failure, judgment, or simply the uncharted territory. Consequently, they repeatedly engaged in self-sabotage, attributing these occurrences to a predetermined destiny. Herein lies the paradox that remains largely unaddressed by the majority. Every entrenched habit, regardless of its nature, confers some form of reciprocal benefit, even if that benefit is merely transient relief. Remaining in bed, for instance, obviates the necessity of confronting the expectations imposed by the external world. Abstaining from initiating that particular project eliminates the potential for experiencing failure. Refraining from articulating your desires ensures that you will never encounter rejection. Your shadow will invariably proffer the illusion of security. It subtly murmurs, "You will initiate change tomorrow." However, tomorrow perpetually eludes arrival until you explicitly identify the benefits you derive from your pre-existing patterns. Until then, escaping their grasp will remain an impossibility. This is precisely why Jung advocated for radical self-honesty, even when such honesty proved painful. The majority of individuals never decelerate sufficiently to genuinely apprehend the underlying message conveyed by their resistance. However, Jung postulated that if genuine change is desired, one must coax the shadow out of its concealment. This is to be achieved not through coercive measures, but through open dialogue. Attempt the following exercise tonight. Find a tranquil setting and envision yourself engaging in a conversation with the facet of your being that consistently fabricates justifications for not commencing. Inquire of it, what outcome do you fear will materialize if I achieve success? Permit the response to emerge, irrespective of whether it sounds absurd, irate, or illogical. Frequently, the shadow will unveil ancient emotional wounds, instances where you were subjected to ridicule, censure, or experienced profound isolation. Occasionally, it manifests as a fear of success itself and the concomitant new responsibilities that accompany it. At times, the apprehension lies in the possibility that should you finally pursue your deepest desires, you risk alienating those individuals who cherish only the former version of yourself. This is not an indication of inherent feebleness. It is merely antiquated suffering disguised as procrastination or exhaustion. Nevertheless, once you have assimilated the narrative, you can begin the process of its revision. Most individuals endeavor to coerce or badger themselves into action. They employ guilt, self-reproach, and the adoption of no excuses maxims. Yet Jung maintained that this approach invariably proves ineffectual, for one cannot cultivate growth through self-aversion. Instead, he championed the principle of self-acceptance. This does not imply an eternal embrace of failure, but rather an acknowledgement that your psyche is striving to safeguard you, even when its efforts obstruct your progress. When you embrace your shadow, when you expose your anxieties, your inertia, or your self-doubt to the light, its capacity to exert control over you from the depths of obscurity diminishes. Suddenly, you are no longer expending energy on self-condemnation. You are liberated to channel that energy toward novel pursuits. You are not obligated to secure victory in this internal conflict within a single day. Jung recognized that authentic transformation commences with the most minuscule, yet most sincere step. Should you find yourself experiencing stagnation, refrain from establishing unattainable objectives. Instead, undertake one small, tangible action. Dispatch the email, embark on a brief stroll, articulate your truth to a solitary individual. Subsequently, observe your shadow's reaction. Does it exhibit resistance? Does it attempt to negotiate? Does its voice become more insistent? Do not engage in combat with it. Simply observe. With each genuine stride, the shadow's dominion incrementally loosens. This particular juncture of the journey is where the majority of individuals choose to retreat. It becomes discomforting. It feels protracted. However, those who persist, who maintain their integrity, continue to listen, and undertake modest, concrete actions, are the individuals who ultimately achieve liberation. Recall that the complete reward awaits at the culmination of this odyssey. Most will never reach it, but should you succeed, you will possess the definitive blueprint for instigating genuine change, irrespective of the number of previous setbacks. What is on the horizon will fundamentally alter everything. In the concluding segment, you will discover how to convert your burgeoning self-awareness into an unstoppable impetus. This will transcend mere theoretical concepts, providing the precise methodology for transforming ambition into tangible reality. Day after day, regardless of the former potency of your shadow, you will be furnished with a step-by-step procedure that Jung would have imparted to anyone desperate for transformation. And you will comprehend why, once you have perceived the shadow, a return to unconsciousness is no longer possible. If your desire is to complete what you have initiated and finally embody the person you envision, do not neglect the final installment. That is where the authentic breakthrough awaits. You have progressed further than most. By this point, you have confronted the concealed forces that perpetuate your stagnation, witnessed how the shadow transmutes ambition into resistance, and assimilated the profound efficacy of candid self-dialogue. However, the unvarnished truth is this: the majority of individuals reach this stage and still recede. Why? Because mere insight does not equate to genuine transformation. They may comprehend their patterns, yet they never translate awareness into tangible action. Jung meticulously observed this phenomenon within the profound struggles of his patients. Self-knowledge, while potent, remains ineffectual unless it culminates in forward momentum. If you are still present, you are prepared for the true reward. The precise methodology for ultimately severing this cyclical pattern, outmaneuvering your internal adversary, and fully embodying the individual you are always predestined to become. Another rousing exhortation is not what you require. What you genuinely need is to cultivate an entirely new dynamic with your own cognitive processes. Here is the profound insight that Carl Jung unearthed. The singular effective approach to altering a deeply ingrained behavioral pattern residing within your subconscious shadow is to consistently expose it to the scrutiny of conscious awareness, repeatedly and persistently. This must be accomplished through actions of such minimal scale that your shadow self is unable to mount any significant resistance. Let's confront reality directly. Your shadow is perpetually seeking an opportunity to declare, "You see, you have faltered once more." Therefore, refrain from attempting to validate yourself through some monumental, sweeping transformation. Instead, demonstrate your capacity to undertake the most minuscule step on a daily basis, even when the endeavor appears utterly futile. Pinpoint a solitary action that propels you closer to your aspirations. This could manifest as a 5-minute stroll, the composition of a brief paragraph, sending a single email, or engaging in one candid conversation. Each day faithfully reiterates this action. Even if your internal monologue insists it is insufficient, the true potency lies not in the magnitude of the step, but in decisively breaking the hypnotic hold of inaction. With each incremental triumph, the resonant voice of your shadow progressively diminishes. A significant portion of humanity navigates life without purpose, subsequently expressing bewilderment as to why their circumstances remain unaltered. Jung posited that profound self-awareness serves as the fundamental catalyst for personal metamorphosis. Consequently, commence meticulously documenting your personal odyssey, not with the aim of achieving absolute perfection, but for the sake of unwavering candor. Each evening, pose yourself the following questions. Did I execute my designated small action today? What forms of internal resistance did I encounter? Did my shadow attempt to negotiate, divert my attention, or undermine my resolve? Commit these observations to writing, even if it comprises merely a single sentence. This deliberate process accomplishes two critical objectives. It fosters an environment of self-honesty, and it enables you to observe the machinations of your shadow in real time. That which is systematically monitored invariably undergoes transformation. One of the most pervasive falsehoods propagated by ambition is the notion that you must shoulder all burdens independently. However, Jung understood intrinsically that genuine evolution unfolds within a communal context, not through isolated struggle. Identify one individual whom you implicitly trust, or even an online collective, and openly communicate the endeavors you are pursuing, irrespective of how trivial or embarrassing they may seem. The very act of articulating your inner truth aloud effectively dismantles the dominion of the shadow. Abruptly, what once manifested as feelings of shame transmutes into genuine connection. Others will discover shared experiences. You will experience a profound reduction in feelings of solitude. This is the mechanism through which your ambition transcends mere ideation and becomes tangible. No longer a mere figment of your imagination, but a vibrant, ongoing process actively unfolding within the world. The shadow, by its very nature, is tenacious. There will be days when you experience the resurgence of all the familiar forms of resistance. Fatigue, elaborate justifications, and ingrained habits will beckon to you. Herein lies the distinguishing characteristic between those who effect change and those who capitulate. They anticipate setbacks but resolutely refuse to permit them to signify the conclusion. Jung famously penned, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." Therefore, should you miss a day, abstain from descending into a vortex of guilt. Acknowledge the presence of the shadow, grant yourself forgiveness, and recommence your efforts. Each instance you recommit to your stated intention, you incrementally erode the foundation of the old pattern. Individuals who persevere, even in an imperfect manner, consistently outlast those who demand absolute perfection from themselves. The operational blueprint in practice, a specific challenge presented to you. Herein lies your reward. The blueprint, authentic, pragmatic, and substantiated by the profoundest dimensions of Jung's life's work. First, unequivocally name your shadow. Document precisely what your inclination towards indolence is genuinely safeguarding you from. Refrain from judgment, simply observe. Second, select a single small daily action. Not a monumental leap, but merely one discrete activity that propels you forward. Third, meticulously and truthfully track your progress. Each evening, record your executed action and any encountered resistance. Fourth, disclose your truth to a trusted individual or within a secure community setting. Fifth, anticipate encountering setbacks, but always return to your path. When you falter, simply begin anew. Never permit shame to dictate the final outcome. Execute this regimen for a period of 3 weeks. Observe the ensuing transformations. You will discern the shadow gradually relinquishing its hold. Your periods of idleness will become increasingly rare. Your self-assurance will burgeon, not from superficial enthusiasm, but from a quiet, intrinsic self-trust. This is not abstract theory. This is the verifiable method by which real individuals, confronting genuine struggles, fundamentally alter their lives. The majority will never complete this transformative journey. They will watch a partial video, bookmark another piece of advice, and perpetually await a magical moment that perpetually fails to materialize. But you, having remained with me until the conclusion, have already demonstrated a preference for truth over comfort. Carl Jung firmly believed that those who possess the courage to confront themselves evolve into the rarest, most potent archetype of individual. They cease to inhabit a narrative crafted by others and commence authoring their own. The world is in dire need of more individuals of this caliber. The world requires your awakened consciousness, your honesty, your forward momentum. If this series resonated deeply with you, here is your ultimate challenge. Share in the comments section what your shadow has been communicating to you, or what single small action you intend to undertake today. Offer support to another individual who is engaged in a similar pursuit. Let us collectively cultivate an environment where honesty is revered and profound transformation is genuinely attainable. Should you desire more in-depth video content that transcends mere hype and furnishes you with tangible tools, hit the subscribe button and embark upon this journey for real. Thank you for your viewership. Your new narrative commences now.